Well, thank you, David, for inviting me to speak. And thanks everyone for choosing to spend an hour of your evening with me. If you're in Edmonton, you are dealing with plus 30-degree weather. So I understand why some people have not chosen to join us because we don't get as much beautiful weather as we have right now. And as David said, I'm happy to answer questions along the way. Just raise your hand and I'll see if I can visually see it, or use the hand raise icon, or use the chat, and we'll try and monitor that. And then we'll also have some time at the end if there's any questions. And as I said earlier, I'm happy to be to connect with anyone through LinkedIn, both for my company and for and personally under Angela, and stay in touch that way. So how would your life be different if you were able to show up at work the same way you did at home and in your personal life? And if you were able to be the same person, fully aligned and completely engaged. This today is the story of how I said yes until I started saying no, and my journey of bringing joy and impact into my work. It's also the story of my transition from HR executive to leading my own consulting firm. By 25, I was an HR manager in a multinational company. By 30, I was an HR director in a global organization. By 34, I was a vice president in a national service company. And by 36, I was a vice president in a $3.5 billion public company. Now, at 40, I'm leading a successful strategic HR consulting firm, and I'm the happiest I've ever been. So now I know that what I shared makes it seem like my journey was the top one that you see here, but it wasn't. It actually looked a lot more like the bottom one. And it was because of this non-linear journey that I was able to hit some of those career milestones that I mentioned earlier. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how I got to where I am today. You know, in the past, when I've shared my story, I always just started with my formal education and skipped the 20 plus years before then. And there's a lot of reasons why I did that. Embarrassment, shame. You know, it took a long time for me to embrace my whole story and not just the seemingly fancy one that fits in that really nice diploma frame that you can put on the wall. I had to realize that there's nothing shameful or embarrassing about growing up poor with, you know, separated family. And you know, I had to be able to learn to reframe those childhood experiences. And, you know, I grew up in a trailer park, but I didn't lack for love or community. If anything, I felt more love and community in that space than I did, you know, in the suburbs in a wealthy neighborhood. You know, the thing is, though, is that love and community, they're so amazing, but when you are a teenager and you want the newest pair of shoes or the newest pants, love and community aren't going to get you there. You need a job. So I started working super early. You know, I learned the importance of having a very strong work ethic. At 12, I was babysitting 3 kids and I had a paper route. By 14, I was a fry girl at McDonald's, showing up at the crack of dawn on weekends to start the opening shift. And I need to tell you, like, outside of being a fry girl, I also hosted the birthday parties for kids. Don't take your kids to those birthday parties because those play places in McDonald's, gross, gross. So advice number 1, if you want something, you need to work your ass off for it. Fast forwarding to grade 11, and I had an incredible opportunity to participate in an exchange to Japan. I mean, I'm surprised I even knew where Japan was I had been on a plane once in my life prior to that, and it was to Vancouver. But you know, I saw the posting up at my high school, and I just I knew that there was more out there, and that this was a chance for me to go for it. So thankfully, my parents, they worked extra hours, they saved money so I could pay for it. I worked extra hours while going to school, and I was able to afford the trip, barely. And I gotta tell you, like, going to Japan changed my life. I didn't even know experiences like that were possible, places like that. And when I boarded that plane coming home, I made a commitment to myself that I was going to choose a path that was going to allow me to have more of those adventures, that was not a one-off. So came home, finished high school, found myself in Banff, finding myself. Came back to Edmonton a couple of years later and completed a 2-year business diploma with a focus on Asian business, back to, making the connection. And then I had an incredible opportunity to do an internship in Beijing with a Canadian law firm. And after that, I came home and finished a business degree majoring in HR. When I did my school way back when, my options at the time were accounting, marketing, general management, and human resources. And at that time, very few schools even offered a major in HR. And honestly, I didn't even know a lot about it. What I did know is that I didn't want to work with numbers every day, and I wasn't great at selling things. So I defaulted to the HR option. Because really, who doesn't love people? Well, surprise. After I entered the workforce, I quickly realized that HR involves a lot of selling and marketing. For example, HR is always selling ideas to employees, to executives, to stakeholders. And we're also expected to understand the financial state of the company. And yes, I have to know how to read a financial statement. The other reality check for me is that from my experience in HR is not the profession to choose if you are a people person. The reason for this is that in HR, while you are absolutely exposed to some of the greatest aspects of people, you also get the other side. And you not only do you see people at their worst, acting their worst, you also are there through some of their most troubling experiences, whether it's going through massive layoffs, downsizing, whatever it might be. And it can be hard if you're all about the people and you're having to make some of those business decisions or execute on some of those. And really, the reality is that HR is there to support the business and support leaders. And there's this common misconception that HR is there for the employees, but it's the other way around. We're there to support the business and the leaders to ensure that they can get the most out of their people. And we work for the company. We don't work for the employees. And that can be hard when you're starting off in HR and you have all these employees coming to you and being like, help me with this, don't you work for me? HR is for people who like a challenge and like having every day be different. I've been doing this for 17 years, and every week I have faced new people challenges, new business opportunities, things that are new to me. There's no playbook in HR. Legislation and company policy is the only black and white. The rest is gray. This profession is built for people who are collaborative, problem solvers, innovative thinkers, comfortable with conflict management, actually confident in conflict management, and excellent communicators. So there may be some of you who question a career in HR because you wonder if it's really strategic. Do you have a seat at the table, and do you make similar money to other business disciplines? The answer is yes to all of those. In the vast majority of companies, we are viewed as a strategic partner that is tasked with getting the most out of the biggest resource in the company, the people. We have finance people who are the money experts, IT and business intelligence focusing on technology and data, and HR, we're the people experts. And as my last boss put it to me, operations is the what, HR is the how. I'll get us back to the journey side of it. So after university, my first employer was a consulting firm, and they also had an executive search side. So I worked on a search side for a few years before I made my way into industry. And this was really important for me because I wanted to gain the experience of working as an HR professional within a company versus consulting. I always felt that getting on the job experience would one day make me a better consultant if I ever chose that path. For most of my career, I have worked in male-dominated industries, and I've often been the only female leader.
Angela,
Yeah.
Marcy.
New Zealand
Yeah.
or titanium? Tasmania.
Hi, is there a question? Oh, or just somebody needs to go on mute? Okay, awesome. So yes, I'll reiterate that I have often been the only female leader, and actually in my last company, I was the only female picture on the public site for senior leaders in the company. And this did pose a lot of challenges for me, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But I also, it's not but, and I recognize that as a white woman, I still carry a ton of privilege, and I have been able to continuously advance throughout my career with not as many roadblocks that other people have faced. And when one company told me that I wouldn't become a manager there anytime soon because I was young and a woman, I left. And thankfully, I was able to find a place that would hire me as a manager. I knew my value and I knew that I was ready for that level of role. It was just about finding the right place. Early on in my career, I was let go from a job because I clashed with a new manager. Shit happens. It hurt, but I got over it and I found an even better job. And you know what? I swore to myself that I would never be that kind of leader. I would never be the kind of leader that would let my ego get in the way, and that I would put somebody else's, job and, like their life at risk from a career standpoint because of my ego. I've been laid off. This is kind of going back to this back and forth with this journey. I got laid off as a director when my company lost their biggest project. That hurt too. But you know what? It was time for me to move on. I knew it. They knew it. And the decision was, that I stay and I lose my staff, or my staff gets a chance to continue to develop, and, I have the opportunity to move on. And you know what? I got my first vice president's job after that. So, I've moved away many times. I've been in Fort McMurray, so I've moved for opportunity. I came back for better opportunity. I did a stint in operations. I have been everything from an intern, an HR business partner, training and development manager, recruiter, talent management leader, director, vice president, and now my favorite, entrepreneur. I often get asked why I chose to leave an executive position to start my own company. It wasn't easy. Frankly, I struggled with what to do for a few years. I did have an amazing job working with some incredible people. I had an HR team that was so awesome. They worked their asses off for that company, for each other, and for me. I had found myself saying yes to every opportunity that had been presented to me over my career. All I knew was yes. What I hadn't considered was what was saying yes all the time costing me. The toll it had started to take and the trade-offs I was making. When I said yes to something, what was I saying no to? And David, we can change the slides. Thanks. When I said yes to something, what was I saying no to? I was saying no to things like walking my daughter to school every day. I was saying no to having my weekends off to recharge my batteries. I was saying no to my mental, physical, and spiritual well-being. I had reached a point where the cost of saying no had started to exceed the benefits of saying yes. For a long time, I had been living these two lives. The dominant life was professional Angela, climbing the corporate ladder and enjoying the benefits that came with it. And it took priority over other parts of my life. My personal relationships suffered while my professional ones flourished. When I had my daughter, I took less than 4 months off because I knew that the American company I worked with was used to US employees taking even less time than that. I didn't want to be replaced. I wanted to show them that my top commitment was my job. Ugh, I think back and that's just gross. I hired a nanny who became a lifesaver over the next 5 years. I was a single mom, and the two of us together raised my daughter so I could continue to have a demanding career. Now, this may have been different if I had worked in non-male dominated industries, but that's not my story. In the companies I worked for, as I said, I was often one of the few or only female leaders, and I did what I knew I needed to do to either get the next job or maintain the one I had. Here are just a few of the things that I heard along the way. Even though you are qualified, you won't be considered for the manager role because of your age and that you are a woman. You are at prime childbearing age. I'm worried that if we hire you and you have kids, that you won't return to the workforce. Good thing you have a nanny, or I would question your capacity to do this job. So after a lot of reflection and thinking about what really mattered, I decided it was time to bring both parts of my life together and shift my priorities, family first, me first. I chose to trust myself and have the courage to make the leap, give up the steady, awesome paycheck, and put myself out there. And I did. So we'll talk about taking this leap. You know, I've made the decision to become an entrepreneur. I didn't really know what that was. Felt a little lost. Thank goodness I knew a few. You know, but I needed to figure out what kind of company I wanted to start. And did I want to go and work for somebody else as a consultant, or did I want to start my own firm? And so thankfully throughout my career, I had had exposure to different types of consulting firms. And, you know, I'll share what some of those are for those who don't have as much experience from an HR consulting space. But there are really big players that many of you are familiar with, like E&Y and Deloitte, and they have massive human capital management consulting arms. A lot of them like to hire right out of school and have you do things their way. That wasn't something that I was interested in, plus they probably wouldn't hire me. Then there are really large consulting firms that just focus on the HR space, but at a strategic level, and they often include executive search. Companies like Boyden and Optimum Talent, those are some very well-known firms in this space. Then there are the small to medium-sized full-service HR firms. These are companies that do it all in the HR space. They're not big enough, you know, for companies that aren't big enough to have their own HR departments, they'll often outsource their HR to one of these full service companies. And at one point, I thought that that's what I was going to do. I'm going to put out my shingle and I'm going to be a full service HR firm. And then I realized that it would fail miserably because I have not been doing day-to-day HR for a really long time. And there are far better people out there who have a lot of that hands-on day-to-day experience of, you know, offer letters and onboarding and things like that, employee relations, investigations. Yeah, I can do all of that stuff, but that's not what brings me joy. And part of making this change was, you know, this is my shot to write my next chapter and only do the work that I want to do, and hopefully have it be stuff that I'm good at and people want to hire me for. So another type of HR firm is a more boutique specialized one, and that's what I have. SwitchHR Solutions, I focus on strategic HR consulting, change management, executive and team coaching, and governance best practices. While the HR consulting work I do tends to be at the strategic level, you know, kind of working with an executive team, I have some amazing clients, which I'll talk about later, that I provide full service HR support for when they need me. So, you know, this saves them from having to have two consultants, because I'm not going to be like, no, oh, I'm not going to do that. No, you know, they've chosen to partner with me. I'm there for them. I've got that skill set. And frankly, it keeps me on my game of staying up to date with some of the stuff going on from the HR side of it. So the benefits of a consulting career, I like to say, you know, why does being a consultant rock? Freedom. That's why. Freedom. I love that I get to choose who I work with and the type of work I'm doing. Over my career, I have worked with some incredible leaders, and I have also worked with some real shitheads. People who lack the skills required to be effective in their roles and choose not to be self-aware enough to do anything about it. You know, there can be bad leaders, but when you know you're a bad leader and you just lean into that, I have no time for those leaders. And especially because as an HR person internally, most of my time was spent dealing with those kinds of leaders. Guess what? I don't have to work with those people anymore. I call it pardon my French, my no asshole rule. There's an entire book out there called the no asshole rule. I got to tell you, it is amazing to be able to institute that in my business. You know, when you work internal in an organization, you often have to do work that really sucks or execute on a decision that you don't agree with. Guess what? I don't have to do that anymore. I choose work that is meaningful to me, and I get to work with clients where I know I am making a positive impact. You know, a major driver for me making the leap was having more time with my daughter. As a consultant, I get to choose my hours. Well, as a consultant leading my own company, I get to choose my hours. If I want to work 70 hours and do that again, I could. Do I want to do that? Fat chance. I want the successful integration of my work and my life, and now I have that. So some of you might be wondering what it is that I actually do. What does a day in the life look like for someone who runs their own HR consulting company? So I'll share a little bit about that, kind of averaging a day together. I get to interface with a ton of clients, all different, keeps me on my toes. For example, yesterday, I started the day by walking my daughter to school. Best part of my day. From there, I had an hour coaching session with my own executive coach. I meet with my own coach twice a week, every Monday morning at 8:30. And it is a phenomenal practice and has really helped me getting, you know, the confidence and the stuff in place to launch my own company. After meeting with her, I joined one of my clients for their weekly leadership team meeting where we discussed the rollout of their Q3 strategic priorities that we actually set last week. And I facilitated that session for them. So I do some strategic planning with clients, but this was kind of looking at how do we roll it out to the broader team for the company. From there, I had a 30-minute Zoom chat with somebody who had been a referral from an acquaintance to just talk a little bit about what I was doing and see if there was an opportunity to do work together. So a little bit of business development. Then I went to Orange Theory because gyms are open and it is amazing for my mental and physical well-being to be active again. And I used to go at 5:45 in the morning. Not anymore. Now I still get up at 5:45 in the morning. I've always been a morning person, but you know, I'm using that time with the weather's nice to sit outside with a cup of coffee or read a book and, you know, just focus on time for myself. You know, after that, I had an executive coaching session with a client that they work for a multinational company. From there, I hopped on a Zoom call because everything seems to be Zoom these days, or Teams or Google, and met with another client and their leadership team. And for that, I was wearing a business advisor hat. They are going through some significant business challenges from a sustainability standpoint. And while at one point I started off as their HR consultant, thankfully, they actually fired their business coach and they said to me, you know, as an HR consultant, you have added more value to our overall business than this guy that we've been working with for 5 years. So can we use you for your business advisory services as well? And I'm like, thank God I got that MBA, hey? And so, yeah, I worked with that. And, you know, there was a couple questions that came up from an HR standpoint. Boom, I could wear that hat and help them through that as well. Some of the other work that I have this week include, you know, reviewing a couple HRIS systems for a client that they want to integrate or implement some new systems. supporting the onboarding of a new COO. I helped a client hire a COO. Then tomorrow, on a professional standpoint, for my own company, I have a meeting with my website developer to get, finally get some of that stuff going. And then throughout the week, I have meetings set up for some business development, networking, and a lot of time for me and my own well-being. But as I said, lots of variety, never a dull moment. So before I kind of move on to that next section, I just wanted to open it up to see if there was any questions thus far.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, is this Jasmine?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hi,
hi, I
it's
can hear
really
you.
nice to, yeah, hi. I'm really glad that I can attend this session, and it's amazing hearing about your experiences.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask about what kind of business challenges do you work with in your consulting career? I just want to know, like, what is it that what kind of challenges are you working with, when the firm approaches you? And yeah, just wanted to get an idea of that.
Yeah, well, let me take a shot at answering, and then let me know if that's not what you were looking for. Typically, the companies that I'm working for from a consulting standpoint are ones where they're either at a startup phase or kind of moving into that mid-sized, where they can't afford to have a senior level HR resource. So what I'm helping them with for most of the clients is transitioning from that startup space to what does it mean to kind of have infrastructure and to have an HR strategy that aligns with your business strategy. For some of these companies as well, Jasmine, they don't even have a business strategy. They've had, the CEO entrepreneur who, got a team of people together, and they've just been going in one direction. And now they're getting some success and have realized that they haven't spent the time to identify our purpose, values, really where we wanting to go, and have some structure around that. So part of my role is coming in and helping them define that, and then looking at, how do they build out their organization from there. Sometimes it could be as much of like, hey, we want to hire a COO, which I had just done for a client. And that was a big change for them. It had always just been the CEO running things, but they reached that point where they needed to add somebody else. So working with them to define what that role needs to look like, how do you communicate it, recruit for it, integrate it. So those are some of the challenges. And then with some of the coaching that I do that's come from working with those same clients is them realizing that, you can have a team of amazing people, but team dynamics always come to play. It's not a but, it's an and. It always happens that we can work together and we can set goals and priorities and have all of that. But ultimately, we're a bunch of individuals, and coming together, we bring our own stories and stuff. And often you have these high performing teams where they don't actually get as much done as they could. So I start wearing some of my HR coaching hats to help them kind of build some psychological safety and trust, and really kind of the framework for them to build from there. So there's a combination of some really kind of frontline stuff and then strategy. Does that help?
Yeah, definitely. Yes. Thank you so much for answering that.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, other questions?
Kevin has a question.
Oh, hi, Kevin.
Hi, Angela. I have 3 questions, so I'll list them out. So the first one is, how did you go about getting your business? So how do you get business coming in? And the second one is, how many clients is it typical for you to juggle at one point in time? And then the third one is, how is your experience like with a coach? So, because I know that you coach, so it's always interesting when I find that people have coaches when they are coaches. And how integral is that coaching experience to your success?
Great questions. Okay, so I will start with the first one, and I may get you to remind me of all of them. The first one was that even starting your business, right? Kind of that process.
get clients? Where do they come from?
Oh yeah, so for getting clients. So for me, I just reached out to my network. I have worked in a few different firms and have a pretty solid HR network. I had also sat on the board of CPHR Alberta, so it's fairly connected in that space. And I will say that for that reason, I was probably luckier than most, because I was able to just send out to my network, including my family and my friends, and say, hey, I'm going out on my own. Here's what I'm doing. Do you know of anybody who could benefit from this? And so I actually quickly ended up with a few clients, and then they shared with other people, and I got some work that way. And so most of my kind of networking business development, I'm not in a place where I'm taking on a lot more right now, because I don't want to have a big company right now. I want to just be able to have that balance. Maybe in a couple of years, I'll want to grow it out and have staff. But I need to enjoy having a little bit more freedom. The second one was at around, maybe remind me.
How many clients do you typically have at a time?
Oh, yeah, I did about half a dozen. So I have 3 big clients that take up probably 80% of my time. And then I have my executive coaching clients, and I have about a half a dozen executive coaching clients, but those are, 2 to 4 hours a month. So I can fit those in. And then I sub as well. I know a couple people in my network that work for some of these really big firms. And at times they just need to be able to tap me on the shoulder and say, hey, can you come and do this? So a couple of weeks ago, I taught a change management course for an Indigenous community. It was a couple of days. I stepped in on that. And then one of my other folks in my network, she's actually on the call here today. There's been times when she's had work on CEO performance assessments and stuff from a board standpoint, where I'll get tapped in for that. And then the last question, having a coach. Oh my goodness. I don't know of any coach that doesn't have a coach. It is, and it's part of those things, like if here we are going to be advocating about the value of having a strategic partner that you can just trust and know that they're going to call you out on your shit, but at the same time, they're going to be lifting you up when you've had a rough day, and, they see the things that you're not seeing. I advocate for that, and I support that with my clients. I need that myself, because it's kind of like when you go to the gym. So I'll just speak of myself. When I go to the gym, if I don't have a coach, or Orange Theory, you have somebody there, they're telling you what to do, I'll lift a little bit, but am I really pushing myself, right? And I might think I am, but they know better. They've seen it, and they can look at me and say, you got more in you, right? And I'm here, and I'll help you with your form, but you have more, and, step up. Or those days when you're full of excuses, to have somebody that you trust who's going to call you out on your excuses and say, listen, you made this commitment to yourself. What's going on? Why aren't you living up to it? So yeah, I fully advocate for it.
Have you always had a coach, or at what point in your career did you find that you really need this?
Yeah, so I started with having a coach as I was considered when I was about 27. The company I worked for, I was identified as a high potential. And so I got a coach at that time, and it wasn't an executive coach. It was somebody who actually coaches high potentials. And I went through a 360 feedback, and I learned so much about myself from that, because there I was thinking like, I am taking on this world. And then I got the feedback that I was doing it, but everybody hated me. And I say that because like, I was just focused on myself. I had my goal in mind. And at that point in my career, I had no idea that, it was everything I did could be at impact of somebody else or at the cost of somebody else. So I have had different coaches throughout my career. The one that I have now is actually a business coach, and she operates in the same space that I do, but she's far more seasoned than I am. So, she looks at me and she's like, listen, there is so much work to go around. I see you as an up and comer in this space. Let me help you out. So she shares all of the tips and tools of the trade. So yeah, I would say like the type of coach changes depending on where you are in your life.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I'm seeing that there's a question in the chat. I'm not able to switch on my mic. How do you work out your fee, and is it the same for all clients by unit? Great question. I know there's some firms and people where it's all the same. That is not the approach that I have taken. I do have different fees. I kind of have a sliding scale. I have, I work for coaching, for example. I have a big multinational client and I coach a couple of employees there. They can afford it. They pay full fees. And then, I do some pro bono work in that space. On the consulting side of it, I also work with a couple big companies where I know that they'll pay the full fee. And then I have what I call my heart clients. These are the clients that I happily give them a discount because, we get to play together. We get to have some fun, and I know that what I am doing for them adds so much value, and they are so just grateful to be able to have me as a partner. And that purpose and that joy that I get is worth it to have a lower rate. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, let's jump on to the next slide. Okay. One of the things that Dave and I had talked about as we were prepping for this of like, what are some of the things that I've been exposed to that have helped shape kind of the way I operate, or that I would recommend for other people to think about. So I've thrown some of them up here. We'll start with some of the formal education. From an MBA standpoint, as a non-technical female leader, this was a requirement. I knew I needed to get it, and I'm glad that I did. I would not have had the vice president level positions that I've had if I hadn't had one. Project management certificate. I didn't pursue the designation, but as David said, as part of my HR portfolio, I at one point was leading the implementation of massive projects, company-wide, 5,000 plus employees. I needed to understand what project management was and how it worked. And that also, from a change management, being able to add in that skill set. The other training that has been invaluable to me is the coaching training. I started it over 15 years ago. Early in my HR career, I had the opportunity to do a couple-day training session, and I immediately jumped on with that because, the HR side of it, there's, I viewed, because I didn't really like some of the day-to-day HR stuff, but what I loved was being able to work with people and help them be their best. And coaching provided a platform to do that. I got certified as an executive coach over 10 years ago, and I used it to support leaders internally. Recently, I was certified as a team coach, and that has been a phenomenal add to my toolkit. And I have worked with so many teams throughout my career, as I was talking about, and I, have really found that being able to support them through the messy team dynamics as a team coach has really helped teams start achieving more greatness. And so now I love it because I can shift between consultant, advisor, team coach, facilitator, kind of all depending on the situation. My toolkits become quite big. The other one that's what the U of A logo there is for. If you haven't already taken the Indigenous Canada course at the U of A, I strongly suggest that you take it. My view is that the Indigenous community deserves way more than they have collectively been given. And so if you haven't already, educate yourselves. It's a free course, 12 modules, just do it. Collectively, we need to do better if we're going to have reconciliation. And I know that I wouldn't have the Indigenous community clients that I have today if I hadn't taken the time to learn. On the job experiences, listen, you can't beat those. You need to get on the job experience. I even had a leader say to me one time, I got promoted early, and she said, listen, I'm going out on a limb here. I'm giving you this job, but you need time in the seat. You need to have some on the job experience. And you know what? You don't want 5 years of the exact same experiences. You need to start asking to take on new projects, join a cross-functional team. One of the best things I did early on in my career is I put up my hand to join an ERP implementation cross-functional team for a global company. I learned so much about project management, change management, organizational dysfunction and dynamics. And since that time, I've now been on half a dozen implementation teams, and I now consult clients in that space. But it would never have happened if I hadn't just put up my hand and said, sure, yes. Books, podcasts, TED Talks. I am always on the hunt for the latest great read, podcast to challenge my way of thinking and improve what I can offer my clients. Some of my faves up here, I love Patrick Lencioni and a lot of his books. Mastering the Rockefeller Habits and Scaling Up by Vern Harnish. He's the one who came out with the concept of the one-page strategic plan. And for small to medium-sized businesses, it has been gold for them. It's a very easy concept to see them through. It's a few years old, but the startup podcast, I still go back to it now that I'm working in the startup space. Lots of amazing TED Talks that are out there. It's so easy to lose yourself going down the TED Talk thing. I'm not sure if any of you have done that before, but you just end up seeing more and more. The one, if you're starting with this space, the one that I recommend most is Simon Sinek's Start With Why. And the reason that one resonates with me is because it's about understanding your purpose. And that the concept is that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And once I found purpose and I knew, what drove me, that was the time to start making some changes. So we'll move on to the next slide and, start closing things off here. And I want to share some highlights. I originally thought like highlights and lowlights, but you know what? We all have the low stuff. Let's talk about, the kind of the things that I learned and have them in three little groupings here. And, the first is to listen to the voice. Whenever I have found myself with a lot of chatter in my head, I know I'm out of alignment. In some way, in some part of my life, I'm out of alignment. At one point in my life, I thought it was perfectly normal to always have that voice in my head. It was like the angel devil, on the shoulder scenario. And I'd be doing something at work that I didn't want to do, but I had to do it. And I'd have the voice in my head challenging why I was still doing it. And I knew it wasn't right. And, think about it, like how many of us have been in relationships or had friendships where we had that voice telling us like, we're unhappy. Why are we with this person? Why are we hanging out with this person? And, what I would challenge you is just, even when we're done this session today, is to take a moment and pause and see what are the voices in your head telling you, and maybe don't tell it to shove off or ignore it. And sometimes, as was the case with me, is that it gets too loud and I had to listen. I needed to listen. And when I started to listen to that voice and follow it, my life became so much more simple and peaceful. And I'm aligned and I am who I am. And so I rarely hear that voice anymore. And when I do, I assure you, I listen. I listen because if it's popped up and I'm noticing it, something isn't right. And you know what? That's our choice. Like nobody owns that part of us. We get to choose if we're going to listen or not. And life is much easier when you do. This also goes along with our moral compass. When you violated it. We've all done it. Don't make a habit of it. In business, there are going to be many opportunities to break it. And that's also a choice. And there have been a few times in my life where I have done that. And to this day, they're so clear because I know it was just so against what I wanted to do. And being pushed, and that's always what it was. It wasn't by choice. It was being pushed to go and do that. That has been the straw that broke the camel's back for many of the life changes that I've made. The next one is about having a supportive network. This is about having a group that challenges and supports you. And I'm so grateful that for the last few years, I have been a part of a group of 4 women, Some of them are on the call today. Yay. We meet once a month virtually or in person when we can. And we legit have a text message thread that has action daily. We meet, we talk about everything. We're there for each other in a judge-free space for whatever each other needs, personally, professionally. One is a COO in a public company, another is a senior leader in a startup tech company, another is a partner in a global consulting firm. And you know what? We are all so different, yet our experiences as ambitious women in business have many similarities. And being able to know that you're not alone when you hear some of the BS that you get faced with, there's something very comforting about that. I already mentioned having a coach, so I won't touch more on that. I can just say that it has been a huge difference for me. And what she did do is she helped me clearly define my purpose and get solid on what really matters to me, and to be clear on my values. My values are living courageously, staying authentic, seeking adventure, and creating positive impact. And I love that I just, can live and shout those at the top of the roof. And then the last is about reflection. And over the last year, I have made a conscious effort to incorporate reflective practices in all that I do. I'm a lifelong learner, and the way that I get better is by looking at what I've done, whether it's the service I've provided a client, the way I handle a particular situation, whatever it might be, but using reflection to look at how did I show up. And then the last is about giving back. When I look back at my life, and I've still got a lot left, but I am where I am because so many people helped me get here. And I also got myself here. When a door was opened, I chose to walk through it. When it was closed, I tried to open it. And if it remained unlocked, I looked for a key or another door. And, when we start out, we are often taking more than we are able to give. For me, this was receiving bursaries and scholarships so I could pay for university. It was having amazing mentors and generous leaders providing me candid feedback to support my journey. And while I still benefit from a lot of that generosity, I now find myself in a place where it's time to give back. This includes my time, my resources, my expertise. I donate my time and expertise to Junior Achievement of Northern Alberta. Not only do I teach in their schools because financial literacy and entrepreneurship for, young adults and students, yes, but I also am on their HR committee for their board. I'm on the board for the McDougall House, and I support their HR and their executive director. I provide pro bono to coaching clients of a not-for-profit in Edmonton. And when asked to financially support the scholarship and bursary programs that I once benefited from, I proudly do so. And I look at it that how lucky I am to be in a place where I can come full circle and hopefully be able to create those opportunities that were one day created for me. So here I am, living my purposeful life with some incredible clients, a few of which I've included on the screen. And why these clients gave me permission to share with them, but why I included them is that, I talked about my purpose and my values. And these are two clients that are so incredibly aligned with who I am and what matters to me, that getting to work with them feels like a gift versus, yes, I get paid and that's cool. But I feel like I'm getting a lot out of it as well. And one of them, Willow Lake Métis Nation, they have a really neat consulting project coming up that we are going to be opening up to the Sauder Management Consulting Club. And so I'm going to work with David on that. We have a call with the CEO on Thursday morning to scope it out. And so stay tuned for more information on that opportunity. It's going to be a really cool opportunity to work with an incredible Indigenous community in pursuit of their mission. And that's it. So I just want to thank you for taking the time to spend the evening with me, allowing me the opportunity to share my journey thus far. And I'll open it up for any questions that you have of me. And Kevin, I saw that with JA, right? Yes. Yes.
Yeah, doing achievement Jamaica, doing an achievement program in Jamaica. That's the first time I came to Canada through that program.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really changes lives, and so I love being a part of it. I started my first time teaching in a class when I was like 21 years old. So it's been a long journey with them as well. Other questions? Okay.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Angela. Very impressive. I know you only showed us the tip of the iceberg, but very impressive journey, every bit of it. And yeah, also I think you mentioned, but just to make it clear, if anyone wants to find you on LinkedIn, you're happy to answer questions if and when you have time.
Yes.
And also giving back is a big part of your ethos. So yeah, thank you for that.
You've got it. Yeah, thank you everyone for having me. And as I said, you can connect with me both on my personal LinkedIn and my professional one, and wish everybody the best in their journeys. And yes, thanks for this.